So welcome everybody. We want to get started. It's 6:30. I'm Nina Fiore with Different Choices. Denise Moorhead and I are managing the Zoom webinar tonight. Thank you so much for joining us for ABLE Accounts, a powerful transition tool. It's part of our Smart Money Financial Literacy series for college and career-bound students, for their families, and for those supporting their success. And this series is a special hosted by Schools for Children's Different Choices Initiative. Brian Ingram is our presenter this evening. He's an expert at the National Disability Institute's ABLE National Resource Center with nearly 30 years of professional experience in disability and employment. Mr. Ingram has consistently helped ensure disabled people receive supports they need to access employment, economic independence, and security. He's also the parent of an ABLE account holder. Brian will provide an overview of the ABLE program and then answer questions after the presentation. So since it's a webinar, your cameras and mics are off during the presentation, but feel free to ask your questions, and then we'll get to answering them in the last 15 minutes of the session. We'll also be sharing additional information in the chat during the session, so be sure to follow along. But before Brian begins, I want to introduce you to Dr. Paul Stein, the Executive Director of Schools for Children. Dr. Stein has provided visionary executive leadership for Schools for Children since 2017. Schools for Children is a Massachusetts-based nonprofit that runs various programs and schools from kindergarten through high school, and that is now also providing transition opportunities like Different Choices to support students. A former superintendent of schools and a principal, Paul began his career as a math teacher in alternative special education school settings. And I'll turn you over to him.
Thanks, Nina. I just want to welcome everyone to this part of our Smart Money series, which is part of Schools for Children's Different Choices project. Last fall, when we first offered Different Choices, we envisioned an annual college and career fair for students with learning and social emotional challenges. Based on the feedback that we received from students, families, caregivers, and support professionals, we decided to expand beyond a yearly event as evidenced by this finance series. So while it may seem that many services end when students leave the world of IEPs, 504s, and high school support staff, excellent programs do indeed exist. Finding them on your own can be overwhelming. With Different Choices, we're collaborating with wonderful partners to bring together resources and information that help students and their families make a successful transition to college, careers, and other post-high school experiences. Together, we are working also to end the stigma associated with disabilities. Enjoy tonight's presentation and tell others about the series, which goes through May 12th. Visit us at differentchoices.org and let us know what you need to make the transition from high school to college and career easier, more hopeful, and something that you can anticipate with comfort and confidence. And thank you, Brian. I've been looking forward to this presentation.
Okay, so the first thing I want to do really quick is talk about the ABLE National Resource Center briefly. And ABLE NRC, as we often call it, is the leading comprehensive source of objective, independent information about federal and state-related ABLE programs and activities, including guidance on tax advantage ABLE savings accounts. Now, our mission is to educate, promote, and support the positive impact that ABLE can make on the lives of millions of Americans with disabilities and their families. So, well, this is kind of self-congratulatory, but I guess it is pioneering work. Our pioneering work in this area and subject matter expertise make us the foremost authority on topics related to the Achieving Better Life Experience, or ABLE Act. ABLE accounts, state ABLE programs, ABLE-related policy developments, and comprehensive integration of ABLE financial capability strategies for people with disabilities in public service delivery systems. And as you can tell, that's kind of pat, but basically why we're here today is hopefully to share some information about ABLE accounts. What I've been told is that this audience is mostly folks who are involved in some way with transitioning youth. And it's thinking about today how ABLE accounts might be what I like to call a very valuable tool in your box as you are making transition plans and as you are moving young people towards independence. So if you can move to the next slide, please, Neil. So in addition to our topic experts, ABLE NRC hosts a website that I'm going to refer to a lot today. And it's designed to educate and provide resources that support people who are interested in opening ABLE accounts. So throughout the presentation today, I'm going to refer you to these resources that are available on this site. And I want to strongly encourage you to visit it and take advantage of the information and resources posted there. This is a pretty short presentation, and it doesn't allow me to get into the weeds, so to speak. But if you grab a copy of this presentation and follow the links that are embedded in the slides, you can get a lot more information, and you can get a lot better idea of how ABLE accounts might be able to help you. So our mission is to educate, promote, and support the positive impact ABLE can make on the lives of millions of Americans with disabilities and their families. And I've said that twice, so now that it's been said, let's look at our learning objectives. Please. So today we're hopefully going to increase our understanding of how ABLE savings and investment accounts make it possible for transitional youth to establish financial stability, retain eligibility for public benefits, and pursue the goals around education, employment, and career development that supports financial self-sufficiency. And we're going to talk about that basic objective from a lot of different angles today. And hopefully by the end of this presentation, you're going to have some ideas yourself about how ABLE accounts might be able to help whoever is transitioning that you care about, or maybe yourself. We're also going to talk about strategies to integrate ABLE accounts into individual transition planning to support financial independence. And finally, how to access and utilize ABLE National Resource Center supports and resources so that you can get that information when you need it and move forward. So I like to start with a couple of big questions. What are ABLE accounts, and why should you know more about them? So there are, of course, many ways to address these questions, but I like to start with a particular fact, just to get us thinking. And if you could advance the slide. Here's our fact. Households containing an adult with a work disability require on average 28% more income, or additional $17,750 a year at median household income to obtain the same standard of living as a comparable household without a member with a disability. That's right. It's expensive to experience a disability. And on top of this fact, many people with disabilities depend on means-tested benefits to access critically needed supports and services that allow them to work, be independent, or even just survive. This is the place where an ABLE account lives. That tension between the need for assets to offset the added expense of life with disability and the need to continue to qualify for means-tested benefits. Hopefully by the end of this presentation, you're going to have a better understanding of how ABLE accounts can be a very useful tool in the box, as I said before, of anyone who's eligible, and especially how it can be useful for those transitioning into independence. Next slide, please. So this slide is kind of mandatory on our presentations. With ABLE, you can save. Next slide, please. So millions of individuals with disabilities and their families depend on a variety of public benefits for income, healthcare, food and housing assistance. There's a resource limit of $2,000 for most of these means-tested benefits. The ABLE Act, which was signed into law on December 19, 2014, creates tax advantage savings accounts for eligible individuals with disabilities that allows for 8 million or more people who might be eligible with disabilities to save more than that $2,000 resource limit. Next slide, please. So an ABLE account is a Section 529A tax-advantaged savings and investment account that's owned by a person who has a Social Security number or tax filing ID and has a disability or blindness. So some of the eligibility requirements are: the disability must have had an onset date before age 26, and you must receive supplemental security income or Social Security disability insurance. That is a eligibility criteria. Now, people who don't receive a public benefit may also qualify to open an ABLE account. For those individuals, they can self-certify that they have a written and signed disability certification from a qualifying physician. So an example of this would be a disability certification form that is found on our ABLE NRC website in the Service Provider Toolkit. So if somebody's on SSI or SSDI, that kind of automatically qualifies. But if somebody isn't on SSI or SSDI, which happens sometimes, if they have that letter from a qualifying physician, they can self-certify that they are eligible because they have a disability that had an onset date before they were 26. So before we move to the next slide, I want to just say, when you think about ABLE, I want you to think about financial independence for people with disabilities. Next slide, please. As it stands now, the ABLE Act allows states to create an ABLE account for people with a disability that began before age 26 that allows them to save and invest money in a tax-exempt account. You can save up to $15,000 per calendar year. That's how much can be contributed to the account by the account owner and or by third parties, family, relatives, special needs or pooled trusts, employers. You can even roll over a 529 college savings plan into your ABLE account. Contributions by family, relatives, special needs or pooled trusts do not count as income against your, for example, your Social Security benefits. Employer contributions are taxable compensation. There is no change in how public benefits programs count the account owner's income, earned or unearned. So that's a really important point. In most cases, if you get a contribution to an ABLE account, it's not going to be counted as an asset against asset limits under SSI and SSDI, but it is going to be counted as income in many cases, except for the exceptions I listed earlier. Funds may be placed in an ABLE account in a safe FDIC insured option if available in the plan, or invested, or both. And kind of what that means is, and as you get into our website, you'll find out a lot more about this, but different states set it up differently. And usually how they do it is they have two different kinds of ABLE accounts, one with a focus on investment and one with a focus on savings. And the ABLE account owner can choose which account they want to focus on and which is going to make the most sense for them. Also, often in the investment accounts, like in a lot of other investment accounts, you can choose how you want that investment account to invest your funds. It can be aggressive, or you can play it safe. There are options around that. And each state has different options. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's just an introduction to that. Now, a working individual who's not had a contributions made into an employer-sponsored retirement account can contribute additional funds from any income up to $12,760, or use the funds in the ABLE account for qualified disability expenses. And we will definitely talk about that more later. And they can do all these things while maintaining eligibility for federally funded public benefits. Next slide, please, Nina. So what does the ABLE Act do? So as I've said before, and I will say again, an ABLE account does not affect benefits paid under entitlement programs, such as Social Security disability insurance benefits. ABLE savings up to $100,000 will not affect supplemental security income, SSI benefits. A person can have any amount of ABLE savings, and it will not affect the free application for federal student aid, FAFSA, housing assistance through Housing and Urban Development Programs, or HUD, Supplemental Nutrition and Assistance Program, or SNAP, Social Security and Disability Insurance, SSDI, or Medicare, or any type of Medicaid benefit, including Medicaid waiver services. Next slide, please. As I said before, well, first of all, let's look at this slide. An ABLE account can be opened at any age, meaning, 20, 30, 40, 50, by or for a qualified person who has a disability. One ABLE account may be opened in this order by the individual with capacity who has a disability, so you can open one for yourself. An individual selected by the eligible individual, so that might be a family member or a friend or somebody who's just generally helping someone with finances. An agent under a power of attorney, conservator, or legal guardian, if that's something that's necessary for that person. A spouse, parent, sibling, or grandparent, or a representative payee, individual or organization. So, as I said before, a person may self-certify that they're authorized to open an ABLE account, and there's no other person with a higher priority to establish the account than them. But an ABLE plan can accept the self-certification. So how are ABLE accounts opened? They're opened online. And generally how you do that is you go to your state's site, and one of the resources I'm going to list is a list of all the states and how you can get in touch with the agencies that are running the ABLE account in each state. The average amount of time it takes to complete the registration to open an ABLE account online is less than 10 minutes. So it's not a huge investment in time. ABLE plans do require a person to read the state ABLE disclosure document, and this provides important information about making savings and investment choices in an ABLE account. Sometimes that can take longer than 10 minutes, right, to get through that document. And sometimes, you have to, people need assistance around understanding the document to the best of their ability. But it's very important that they do read that document and understand it before they go online and register an ABLE account. Once the account's opened, the account owner can grant others permission, which is revocable, to access the various levels of information and or to take specified actions in the account. This can be really important, and we'll get into it later when we talk about some of the strategies that people have used around ABLE accounts and transition, because sometimes a third party needs to make deposits, and so that is definitely possible. All right, next slide, please. So this is a map with all of the states, and there are 45 of them currently that have ABLE programs from which you can choose. If you're ABLE eligible, you can open an ABLE account in any state that has an ABLE program that accepts outside residents. So some states only accept applicants from their own states, but a lot of states will accept applicants from any state. So again, this is something that you can find out on the ABLE NRC website with our state comparison tool, which is our link, I believe, is in this presentation. So I have a disclaimer I need to read, so I'll read it very quickly. The ABLE National Resource Center does not manage or issue ABLE accounts directly. We partner with state ABLE programs to ensure information contained in our tools and resources are updated regularly. We monitor these resources closely but all information remains subject to change by individual state ABLE programs. For details about any state ABLE program, refer to the state's plan disclosure documents. And what we can do at the ABLE NRC website is link you to these state ABLE plans so that you can read those disclosure documents. Next slide, please. So here you go. Most ABLE accounts are opened online, and you can contact specific ABLE plans, state plans, for alternatives if you need one. Once the account's opened, the account owner can choose to allow others access to various levels of information about the account and/or take specified actions on the account. And at the bottom of this slide is a link to selecting and opening an ABLE account, which is a tool on our website that can be very helpful when you're thinking about opening an ABLE account and thinking about which ABLE account provider to contact and use. Next slide, please. So how much and who can contribute? So this is the math, and I'm not always very good at the math, but I have a lot of helpers who help me out. So hopefully this will make sense. So an annual total of $16,000 can be contributed into the ABLE account. And these funds can come from friends and family, special needs or pooled trusts, 529 college saving account, college savings rollover. In addition, the ABLE account owner can contribute earned income, unemployment insurance, stimulus payments, tax refunds, and an ABLE account owner who works and does not have contributions made to a retirement plan may contribute up to an additional $12,880 from their earnings within a calendar year in the continental US, $16,090 for Alaskan residents, and $14,820 for Hawaiian residents. So that can be a considerable amount of money. And it can go up to, as we said before, up to $100,000 overall. There are limits to how much you can contribute in a single year, but the totals can continue to accrue in the ABLE account from year to year until they get to really significant numbers. One of the things that we like to recommend is that folks who are considering opening an ABLE account think about putting together a circle of support. And a circle of support can contribute to their ABLE account and the management of the ABLE account. An ABLE account can be a good alternative to baby bonds or a child savings account or a 529 account. Having an ABLE account for savings and investing support can support individuals as they identify goals and learn money management skills. So if they work closely with a circle of support, they might be able to have great success with this. And a circle of support is a group, I should probably tell you, of people committed to helping the ABLE account holder achieve a better future and meet their goals. The circle could be small or large and could be comprised of anyone that the ABLE account holder chooses or who they know well and who are willing to support them. So that can include residential staff, a family member, like a parent or a sibling, a representative payee, a friend, professional, clergy, an employer, just about anybody. When building a circle of support, the most important thing is trust. So an ABLE account owner may select the members of their circle of support to help them learn skills and make wise money decisions. ABLE account owners who are working or planning to work need to reach out to a work incentive planning associate, a WIPA, or a certified work incentive coordinator, a CWIC, to learn about community resources that can help them work to their fullest capacity and use the SSA work supports to help them increase their earned income and savings, and also to learn how to build their circle of support. So this message is twofold. First of all, you don't have to manage your ABLE account alone. In fact, we encourage folks to get as much support as they need to make sure that the ABLE account can really, really help them as much as possible. Secondly, especially when dealing with Social Security benefits and the issues that income or assets can bring to that, it's always a best practice to have a benefits specialist involved, a CWIC or a WIPA. And again, that's something that you can find a link to on our website, a link of your local CWICs and WIPAs for you to get in touch with, because using and leveraging those Social Security work incentives can be a huge part of a transition plan. And especially when it gets into employment and when somebody's talking about introducing income into the picture. Okay, next slide, please. So why save and enable account? State ABLE plans allow over time, as I mentioned, savings up to $235,000 to $529,000. That's a lot of assets. The person with the disability owns the account and can use it to pay for qualified expenses and can invite others to assist them with managing the account. And we'll talk a lot more about qualified disability expenses very soon. The account balance can be invested through a variety of options offered by an ABLE program. And there can be interest growth in an ABLE account that's tax-free. Contributions from family, friends, a special needs or pooled trust or a 529 college savings plan rollover do not count as income by federally funded means-tested benefits programs. And many ABLE accounts include a debit card option for easy access to funds. Now, as it was mentioned in my very generous introduction, I am the parent of an ABLE account holder. And I've got to tell you that in our state, we do have a debit card option. And it has been absolutely instrumental in my son's learning how to manage his own money. Because the money that's in the ABLE account is his money and he has primary access to it. And he decides which qualified disability expenses and when he would like to use it to purchase. So we'll talk more about that later, but that's a great option that many ABLE plans have. Next slide, please. Now I include this to let people know that ABLE accounts, although they kind of seem new compared to some other kinds of benefits, right, are actively being used out there in the world with great success at improving people's lives. So right now, 8 million people with disabilities are ABLE eligible. And these are fourth quarter 2021 ABLE statistics for you. Currently, there have been 131, boy, that's pretty specific, ABLE accounts opened as of the fourth quarter of 2021. As of that time, there were 104 billion in assets in ABLE accounts. And the average ABLE account held $9,315 in it. So here's a link down here to the ABLE decision guide, finding the funds to save in an ABLE account. We get that question a lot. Where do we find the funds? Well, we have a tool that can help you to think about that. And so if you click on the link, you can go check that out. Next slide, please. Let's talk about qualified disability expenses. So these are the things that you can use ABLE account funds to pay for. So this is a pretty good list. And let me tell you, qualified disability expenses are pretty broad. Any expense that can support or address an issue related to your disability can be a qualified disability expense. So that could be education. That could be basic living expenses, including food and shelter. That could be housing, including utilities, rent, modification of the home, purchasing a home or property taxes. It can be transportation. It can be employment training and support. It can be assistive technology, personal support services, healthcare expenses, legal fees, financial management costs, and funeral and burial expenses. So I'm going to tell you that there's a link at the bottom of the slide there that links to our tool determining whether something is a qualified disability expense. And I would encourage you to click on that to get more information about this. But as you can see, it's broad. Qualified disability expenses include many, many things that people run into, especially around transition. Next slide, please. So I just want to say that in my experience, the inability to save or to accrue assets impacts transition. A lot of costs are unexpected. They're hard to plan for. And these kind of expenses tend to really throw a monkey wrench into transition plans. Things like housing costs, transportation costs, work items, work supports, really any expense that requires immediate attention and quick access to funds can be problematic. And I mentioned earlier, you know, I have a son and he is currently transitioning. He's 21 years old and he just moved into his own apartment. And that was a big deal. It was a very big deal. He is the owner of an ABLE account. And I just want to say that that ABLE account was useful in ways that even I didn't predict around this transition into an apartment. And, you know, I work for ABLE NRC, right? So we used his ABLE account, or he used his ABLE account to pay for some moving expenses, some movers, actually. We used his ABLE account to access non-federal contributions from local nonprofits around rent assistance. So those local nonprofits were able to deposit the rent assistance into his ABLE account, and it didn't count as income, which was really ended up being really, really important for his transition. We were able to use it for transportation. My son actually is going to college right now, and due to the nature of some of the disabilities he experiences, transportation is a huge issue for him. And he needs pretty much door-to-door transportation, which, you know, he's eligible for from the local Lyft service. But at the same time, the local Lyft service doesn't work very well sometimes for college because things can change. So oftentimes his staff end up driving him, the staff that he gets to assist him through his DD services, or he has to take a Lyft. And he's used his ABLE account to pay for those things. We're also really thinking that we're going to use the ABLE account. He's in a design program at the university, and he wants to transition into employment as soon as he finishes it. They have a lot of really amazing programs associated with the design program where he can do internships, trial work periods, and he really wants to leverage those into employment. So we're already starting to consider his future income and how that's going to impact his benefits. And we're working with a benefits planner, and we're trying to get ahead of that. So next slide, please. One more thing. My son is okay with me sharing his story, but none of the personal details. So that's why I didn't. I'm trying not to do that. Next slide, please. All right. So all individuals who have a disability, whether they receive a public benefit or not, are encouraged to work to their fullest ability. Almost 65% of working age adults with disabilities receive benefits from at least one public benefit program. Some of the benefits are means tested, where income and resources determine whether or not a person is eligible or continues to be eligible for the benefit of the program. So saving in an ABLE account does not affect most federally funded means tested benefits. And you can learn strategies and supports and services discussed in this presentation to save in an ABLE account. So that was part of the FINRA information brief of May 2018, and there's a link to that at the bottom of the page. So I encourage you to check that out as well. Next slide, please. So let's talk about qualified disability expenses as they relate to employment specifically, and also a little bit education. So education and work-related QDEs, or qualified disability expenses, can very much enhance career development. They can help to address barriers to securing employment, and they can help an individual to retain employment and support people to work to their fullest capacity. So let's look at some of the things that people have paid for with their ABLE accounts. Job coaching or additional job coaching on top of what they might qualify for through a different program like vocational rehabilitation, accommodations on the job, home modifications, ownership or rental, assistive technology, tools or uniforms, transportation, which I mentioned, including vehicle purchase, tuition, books, fees, those count. You can do that. A laptop, computer, which I'll talk about a little bit more when we look at some of our examples. Fees for licenses or certifications, dormitory fees, or costs associated with self-employment. And again, we have an ABLE decision guide listed at the bottom of this slide, ABLE accounts and working people with disabilities, which I would encourage you to check out. Next slide, please. All right, we're getting to my very favorite part of the presentation. So in order to illustrate some real life strategies, I'd like to share some real life stories with you about actual ABLE account holders. I know them because all of the people that we're going to be talking about today are or have participated on our ABLE ambassador team. So let's start with Cheryl. Next slide, please. So we have a parent of an ABLE account owner, Cheryl Walfall Flagg. So Cheryl lives in Raleigh, North Carolina. She works for a North Carolina nonprofit that operates Head Start and early Head Start programs and other child, family, and community service programs. So Cheryl and I hit it off because my mother did the same thing actually out here in Oregon. Her 20-year-old son, Sean, is in college, and she has a 15-year-old nephew, Devante, who she and her husband have legal guardianship over. Both young men are on the autism spectrum and have ABLE accounts to support their education, employment, and increase their financial independence. Next slide, please. Now, Cheryl and her husband live with their 3 boys in Raleigh, North Carolina. Her 19-year-old son, Sean, has had an ABLE account since 2017. Her husband, as legal guardian, recently opened an ABLE account for his 14-year-old nephew, Devante. In addition to being really big Marvel Cinematic Universe fans, Sean and Devante are both on the autism spectrum and meet SSA's disability criteria, which makes them ABLE eligible. So Cheryl was a founding member of our ABLE Black, Indigenous, People of Color, or BIPOC Outreach Ambassador Program, and she's been working with ABLE NRC since 2018. As a mother, she understands the positive impact an ABLE account can have on our kids' finances in future lives, especially as young Black men with autism. In her role as an ambassador, she's working hard to make sure that other parents of children who have disabilities, and in particular, parents in the BIPOC community, are aware of the increased financial stability that an ABLE account can provide. So Cheryl's really been a key resource on all things ABLE. And this is a quote, so I like to read it from Cheryl. Our boys face many struggles because as young Black men with autism, their education, health, social well-being, and earning power are impacted by how society views and treats them. We're changing that trajectory through academic, social, and financial education, empowering them to reach their highest potential. BIPOC families and individuals who face similar struggles need to know that there's an opportunity to achieve a better life experience with an ABLE account. Now, one strategy that Cheryl is piloting is integrating the ABLE Employer Toolkit and ABLE Service Provider Toolkit into the resources offered by North Carolina's Head Start programs. These resources make it easy for employers and service providers to inform their employees and customers about ABLE accounts. As both an employer and a service provider, Head Start programs can benefit from both of these toolkits for their staff and families served. So we really think what Cheryl's doing is important. And we're looking forward to sharing this strategy as a roadmap to ABLE that Head Start programs and other service providers across the country can use. Okay, next slide, please. So our next ABLE account owner is Sarah Perez. And Sarah is 36 and is ABLE eligible due to a mental health disability. She's a mixed media artist who volunteers in her community and is running for school board in the Irish Hills of Michigan. Sounds very scenic, doesn't it? Sarah and her parents are contributing to her ABLE account to improve her overall quality of life. She's in the process of getting out of debt by paying down her medical bills. She's also using her account to offset medication costs and to support her growing photography business and ability to earn and put more money into her ABLE account. So some of the things that she's paid for are a laptop for her business, photography equipment. As I mentioned before, she's been paying down her medical bills. She pays for co-pays on medicines that help to support her. And she pays for gas and transportation to medical appointments and work events. So one of the things about Sarah is that her mental health disability cycles, meaning the level of impact it has on her life varies based on a lot of different factors. So Sarah's told me that having an ABLE account helps her to leverage the resources she's able to accrue when the impacts are low, and it helps her get through the times when her disability becomes more impactful. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this one is Jessica Salmon. And Jessica is 25 and works at Beans and Company. Her case manager is Eric Madsen with the Connecticut Department for Developmental Services, and introduced Jessica and her parents to the ABLE account. Jessica's ABLE account has allowed her to save money from her earnings rather than needing to spend it down. So one of the things to note about this story is that one condition for eligibility to receive DDS services is that the person receives Social Security benefit. So both of those things made Jessica ABLE eligible. Now I can give you a little report on Jessica. She's currently living in her own apartment with a roommate and live-in supports. And you can see her at work right there in the picture. But I know she's very, very happy with that, and so are her parents. Next slide, please. So this is another parent of an ABLE account owner, Amy Tesler. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about Amy, but let's talk about her son, Scott, for now. Scott's a 24-year-old on his second set of work experiences in Pleasanton, California. And you can see him in the picture at his first experience at Doubletree. So Scott was diagnosed on the autism spectrum when he was 2 years old. He has a significant disability, which meets the criteria for ABLE eligibility. In 2018, Scott's parents spent a total of 15 minutes opening Scott's Ohio Stable account using their online application. They then took advantage of the free and easy rollover offered to all ABLE account owners and switched to the Cal ABLE program in California. So this is an example. When Amy and Scott were first looking at ABLE accounts, California didn't have one and Ohio did. So they opened an ABLE account in Ohio And then they moved it to California once California opened their ABLE program. And they did this once the debit card option was in place in California. So the Cal ABLE program opened in December 2018, and the debit card was launched later in 2019. So Scott's mother, Amy, shares that by paying for Scott's full share of housing expenses with his SSI check, his wages and supplemental funds, excuse me. So by paying Scott's full share of housing expenses with supplemental security income check, wages, and supplemental funds from his ABLE account, Scott's SSI payment is not reduced. This means that he has an additional $257 available each month, which adds up to an extra $3,084 a year. Now, I would probably bend over to pick up $3,000 laying on the sidewalk, right? However, putting this strategy in place takes a little bit more effort than bending over, but not that much. Scott also takes advantage of a special needs trust, which was established to provide direction for his safety and emotional well-being well into the future. The trust is going to be the primary source of his support, in addition to means-tested public benefits such as SSI and Medicaid that he currently receives. Scott also may become entitled to child disability benefits and Medicare once Amy and Steve retire. Scott's younger sister, Jenna, hopefully is going to be able to enjoy her brother and not be burdened by financial stressors related to disability and expenses for his ongoing support because of the combination of his special needs trust and ABLE account and other public benefits that are going to ensure Scott's future is secure. Now, Amy says, services are rarely provided at the rate parents want for their child. If ABLE had been available years ago, Scott's account could have been used to provide additional speech therapy, hearing tests, neurological assessments, drug costs, occupational training, job coaching, transportation, or clothing for employment. With his ABLE account, Scott's parents are better able to help him to achieve his full potential. Next slide, please. One more quote from Amy. She has a lot of amazing ones. She says, Scott will always need help managing money and paying his bills. It would not be prudent to give him access to a large amount of money, but having the ABLE account allows him to gain basic financial skills. In our situation, having both a special needs trust and an ABLE account is ideal for maximizing his benefits and helping him to achieve some financial independence. Okay, so now next slide, please. We're going to move on to Hector. So Hector Ramirez, a Latin Chiricahua Apache, Two Spirits, is a member of the LGBTQ community. And he opened his ABLE account on the first day that the Cal ABLE program went live in California. Earlier this year, Hector was working and living in a one-bedroom apartment, sleeping on a mattress on the floor in the dining room so that his mom could have the bedroom. As an individual with autism and bipolar disorder, Hector's ABLE account is being used to provide a safety net while he's working to become self-sufficient and get himself into his new home. So Hector achieved his biggest ABLE goal of them all by buying a home in May of 2019 after decades of battling homelessness. So here's some strategies that Hector uses to fund his ABLE account. He uses his employment earnings, he uses his SSA, SSI back payments, and he uses his Circle of Support and Gift of Independence card. So this is a quote. Now, Hector's really good for quotes, and we have quite a few from him, but I like this one. By the time I turned 44, I had moved over 40 different times. I've lived both in a big, nice house and in a closet and in a car on the streets. The main reason I wanted to open an ABLE account was that I could finally have a place to call home. So Hector shared last year when he bought his home that, and this is a quote as well, I feel like this is a dream that's not happening, but it is. My ABLE account has helped me in ways I did not think it would. I came into this because I wanted to have a safety net for when my benefits were not there, so that I wouldn't end up homeless again. And instead, I moved into a new home for me and my mom. While it's only a couple of miles from where I used to live, I can't help but think that even the sky looks different. So another thing Hector often says that I always like to share is that money is medicine. What he told me he meant by this is that the economic insecurity associated with experiencing a disability had a huge impact on his life. He had 40 homes in 44 years, right? And that having the ability to hold on to assets and to save, free from worrying about you losing his means-tested benefits, has given him a kind of security that he never even dreamed was possible. That's a really moving story. It always moves me whenever I look at it. All right, next slide, please. We are into the resource portion of this. And, you know, I referred to a lot of resources as we were going through some of these slides, but it makes sense to kind of sum it all up for you and make sure that you know where these are in case you're interested in using them. So next slide, please. So the ABLE National Resource Center, just to remind you, is the leading comprehensive source of objective, independent information about federal and state-related ABLE programs and activities, including guidance about tax-advantaged ABLE savings accounts. And at ABLE NRC, you can check out the ABLE decision guides. And I referred to a lot of the decision guides today. They're a way for people to kind of, on their own, research different aspects of ABLE account ownership and help them to help people decide if they want to open an ABLE account, and if so, you know, which ABLE account do they want to open. So I really encourage you to check them out. We also have Able to Save podcasts. So this is a series of podcasts with folks both who have ABLE accounts and who have information relevant to people who have ABLE accounts. And if you like the podcast format, it's very easy to click on that, look at the topics that might interest you and to check them out. Every month, we send out an achievable newsletter, which has all the latest news on ABLE that you might like to know. So we encourage you to check that out as well. We have the state comparison tool, which we actually did talk a lot about today. And this is a tool that takes a look at all of the different state ABLE plans, so shows you how to get in touch with them, and kind of shows you which ones are available to people who are out of state, stuff like that. And it's really easy to use and really helpful for folks who are thinking about opening an ABLE account. We also have a service provider toolkit, which is targeted towards folks who are providing services to people who might be eligible for ABLE accounts. It has a lot of information that's targeted towards helping to inform people about ABLE accounts and helping them to make a decision about whether to open one or not. We have an employer toolkit that's meant for businesses. Again, for folks, for businesses who are thinking about employing people with disabilities or who do employ people with disabilities, about how ABLE accounts can support them in those efforts. And then we have our BIPOC outreach toolkit, which contains those ambassadors that we were talking about today and is evolving all the time. So we work with the ambassadors. We worked with the ambassadors to develop the BIPOC outreach tool, and we work with the ambassadors around all of these tools to make sure that they're accessible to everybody. So I really encourage you to check out ABLE NRC and check out some of these resources. Now, since I took a little bit of, I told you some of the BIPOC ambassador stories, I want to take a minute to talk about that BIPOC outreach toolkit a bit more. Next slide, please. So that's the page. And the toolkit is intended for agencies and organizations and community groups to build awareness of ABLE accounts. And as I mentioned earlier, it was designed in partnership with our ABLE NRC BIPOC ambassadors to showcase and provide guidance on how 529A ABLE savings and investment accounts can benefit eligible members of minority populations while helping them maintain eligibility for critical public benefits. So you can take full advantage of the ABLE BIPOC Outreach Toolkit to address inequalities faced by BIPOC individuals and increase financial stability for this population. We suggest you integrate the following strategies, tools, and resources as a part of your outreach, education, and ongoing services if you are a service provider, and you check them out if you're somebody who feels like they might benefit from them. So the other resource I talked about a lot were the decision guides. So I want to talk a little bit more about those too. Next slide, please. So this again is the decision guide page. And I just want to talk about some of the topics that are covered under the decision guides really quick. So we have, am I ABLE eligible? And how do I open an account? How do you find funds to save in an ABLE account? Determining whether something is a qualified disability expense, that can be really useful because qualified disability expenses by definition are kind of broad. So it's good to have that extra support in figuring out if a particular expense is one. Understanding ABLE account savings and public benefits. So understanding the interaction between your savings in your ABLE account, how they interact with publicly funded benefits, means tested benefits. ABLE accounts and working people with disabilities is another one we have. Again, that could be really important towards transition as folks are thinking about living independently and obtaining employment, thinking about how ABLE accounts can support that. Then of course we have the basics, opening an ABLE account, managing an ABLE account, and finally ABLE accounts and special needs trusts and pooled trusts. Again, as we were talking about with Scott's story, how those two things can work to support each other if somebody has both. So now I'm on a roll. I just want to mention briefly our Able to Save podcasts. Next slide, please. If podcasts are something you enjoy, we have some for you. So you can hear from leaders in the public and private sectors, as well as from ABLE account holders and their family members about how ABLE accounts can be an effective savings tool to help improve health, independence, and quality of life for people with disabilities. And the link is on the bottom of the slide there to check out the Able to Save podcast series. And I might be on one of those podcasts, although I won't say that for sure. Okay, next slide, please. Just a quick heads up for the Financial Resilience Center's COVID-19 Online Resource Center. Just because it could be helpful during these times of COVID-19 measures. So it's for people with disabilities and chronic health conditions. The Financial Resilience Center was developed by the National Disability Institute with funding from Wells Fargo Foundation. And it really gives people some ideas with a disability focus on how to financially get through these times with COVID. Next slide is thank you. And so I would like to thank you. And I hope that you found this presentation helpful and interesting. And I will turn this back over to our hosts.
Thank you so much, Brian. I spent a few hours kind of diving into the whole ABLE thing, and you just clarify all of it so well. So really, thank you for it.
Well, thank you. I sometimes, there's so many details involved. I sometimes don't know if I'm making sense. So that's nice to hear.
No, you definitely do. And so we're going to get to all of your questions. Yes, so we'll be sending out the recording, the PowerPoint, and any links that we have from ABLE to you as we follow up to this presentation in an email to everybody who registered. Also, the PowerPoint slides are already on our website at differentchoices.org. If you go to the Smart Money 2022 area, they're right under Brian's picture. There's like, it says PowerPoint presentation slides. First question is, can you please elaborate on the difference between asset and income?
I can. Assets refer to savings usually, or stuff like houses, cars. Income is money that comes into your household. So they are related, but a little bit different.
Do they both count towards like your SSI, SSDI? Like, or does one count and one doesn't?
They count, but they count in different ways. So income impacts your cash benefits by different formulas, depending on whether you're on SSI, SSDI, or some combination of the two. Again, that's something I'm gonna strongly encourage people to connect with benefits planners to learn the details, because it can be very individual based on your situation. But income can affect cash benefits. Assets affect eligibility. So that's a little bit different. You can only have $2,000 in assets, countable assets, and maintain eligibility. So
Unless the money's in ABLE.
then it is not counted as an asset. There you go. That's the point. Yeah. But it might be counted as income going in, depending on where you got it.
Right.
Not all income is counted as income. And the exceptions I mentioned a couple of times in the presentation, although to be honest with you, I don't know them off the top of my head. But there
Well,
are
also it's different in different states, right? And you're looking at the kind of global, the national level, right?
that is true. And although we do have certified benefits planners on our staff here at ABLE NRC, I am not one of them. And so I try not to give out, really specific advice around benefits planning if I can help it. But I will say, and I cannot say this enough, as people are moving into transition and as they're considering income, contacting and working with a Social Security benefits planner is essential. CWICs, you want to do that, and it can take a little time to connect with them, and it can take them a little time to understand where you're at with the benefits and really provide that advice that you need. So I will say that over and over again.
Yeah, the sooner you get started, the better.
Yeah, immediately is always a good idea to reach out.
The next question, can you use an ABLE account for payments to school like college or grad school loans?
And the answer to that is easy. Yes, you can.
Does a meal at a restaurant fall into the food category?
It can. I think, like, for example, with my son, he has a lot of mobility issues, and during COVID, we would do the Grubhub thing on occasion because of his disability. He was not able to do it any other way, you see. And so that counted as a qualified disability expense. Now, one of the things that qualified disability expenses are broad, and I encourage you to take a look at the additional materials on the website that concern them. But they're pretty broad. I think one of the things that I've heard some of my colleagues say that I like to repeat is that, if you're ever in doubt, hold on to the receipt in case anybody asks you about it.
Yes.
And have in your mind how it was disability related. So, if a meal at a restaurant is delivered because of COVID, or, so let me just use this justification we used for my son was that he was very, very at risk for COVID. There was a really high chance that if he got COVID, it would lead to many other complications. And so therefore, he did not even want to go through a takeout window at that time, so
Yeah.
that was how we did it. So I hope that answers your question and maybe illustrates a little bit more about qualified disability expenses as well.
Fran says, hello. If a young adult with an ABLE account has modest wages from part-time employment, can some of those earnings be contributed to their ABLE account? This would be helpful since the 2,000 asset limit for SSI limits regular savings, even though there will be occasional necessary medical expenses that are large that would be hard to manage with the SSI asset limits. So yes.
And the answer is yes. And that's a very, very smart way to use an ABLE account. You got it right on the nose. Maybe I was making sense. That's
Absolutely.
a strategy, and a lot of people use it.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. Another question is the main benefit of an ABLE debit card that one directly pay for qualified expenses without leapfrogging the money through the disabled person's regular bank accounts?
I mean, possibly. I mean, an ABLE account isn't, I mean,
But ABLE also is a regular bank account, right? Like you can use it.
you can choose that option with some programs. So not all states offer that option.
I see.
And actually, in one of the examples, that was, I believe, I can't remember who it was. Yeah, see, I'm terrible for stuff like that. But they got an Ohio account when they lived in California.
Right.
The California account didn't have debit cards. And then once the California account got debit cards, they rolled it over into a California account. Yeah, because you can have a savings account with some ABLE programs, and it can also be an investment account. It's always an investment account. That option is in every state, I believe, but the savings account option isn't universal yet.
I see.
More of them are doing it. Once you do that, now I would say, like, why I feel like it's cool is because the ABLE account owner, once that money is in the ABLE account, sometimes it takes about a week to get in, but once it's in there, they don't have to ask anybody. They don't have to go through anybody else. They can pay for their own expenses.
Right.
They need it.
The autonomy, I mean,
The
just,
autonomy is amazing. And I've seen that in my son, the difference.
yes.
One of the things, he has a service animal, and he now, since he moved into an apartment, he now has to take care of that service animal. And that's one of those unexpected expenses we were talking about. Boy, there's a lot of them associated with the service animal. You never can.
Yes.
Just the other day, the service animal was chasing a ball in the park for recreational purposes and cut her paw open on a piece of glass.
Oh.
And my son had to go to the animal emergency room and
Oh
have
gosh.
emergency care. And that was something that the ABLE account allowed him to do. Without him, without that ABLE account, he would have been at a complete loss, and he would have called his support staff or me and his mother probably.
Right.
What do I do? What do I do? What do I do?
He could take care of it himself, like the amount of self-confidence that brings and just the security.
So in my mind, that's the most positive reason for that. That's really gives people control. Now, again, I mean, that level of control isn't appropriate for every person with an ABLE account, but you can set it up however you like. So whatever seems like the best way for that circle of support that we encourage everyone to establish.
Yeah. Somebody asked, can an SSI recipient put their benefit directly into the ABLE account?
Yes.
Somebody says, I'm guessing an employer can't pay an individual directly into an ABLE account?
No, but one of the exceptions for income was if somebody has income from employment, they can enter an additional amount of money into their ABLE account directly from the income, and it won't be counted as income. So
Oh, wow.
exceptions that I mentioned.
Someone says, I understand that a beneficiary cannot be designated in the event of death of the person who the ABLE account was created for. Is that true? And if so, what do you suggest?
Well, that is definitely a question that comes up often. It is a question that I'm going to have to defer. It is not my area of expertise, and I'm a little bit hesitant to go there. I think I understand, but I'm not 100% sure. So actually, if we have that written down in the chat, is there a way for us to save that? And maybe...
Sure, I can save that.
Okay.
Denise has already saved all of them, so I can send that to you.
Thank you, Denise.
Are there any reasons an organization would not be able to open an ABLE account if they are the rep payee. I work with AFC/shared living, and this has been an issue. Oh, I see. So
I
if
think
they-
I understand that. Can the rep payee open an ABLE account? Will that be allowed? Our understanding of that is that it is. So in some states, folks have been running into barriers around that. And again, this is one of the differences between ABLE NRC and your state ABLE programs, right? So we don't actually administer ABLE accounts. Each state does it based on its own plan. So that's really going to need to be something that is, if it's happening to you, I'm not sure if it's something that's happening to you, you just heard about. But if it is happening to you,
they say they work with an AFC/shared living facility, and this has been an issue there.
yep. So that you would need to go to the state ABLE account that you were working.
Which is on the website, right? You have links to that.
We do have links. Yeah, we do have links to all the state organizations running ABLE. So yeah, you could maybe begin to address that.
Do you have to prove or explain any expenses paid for the ABLE account?
Nobody has yet, but again, we encourage folks to keep records of their expenditures, receipts, and maybe notes as to why they feel it was a QDE.
I mean, whenever I traveled for work, I always made little notes on my receipts because otherwise you can't remember anyway, right?
Well, in the electronic age, it's not as hard as all that too, because there's often a record.
True that. True that.
So hold on to receipts.
Any other questions? I think we've addressed everything that we had. Somebody says in Massachusetts, you can do this at Fidelity. I'm not sure exactly what that's in reference to, though. And Denise has just put the ABLE NRC website information in the chat. So if you want to go there and check it out, please do. If we don't have any other questions, I can't thank you enough for this time, for your presentation. The website's very complete. Like I've been through it, and it dives down deep. It takes you to other resources. So I recommend highly that if anyone has remaining questions, to take some time and really explore that website. It's been very well put together.
Yeah,
And
we've heard back it's pretty user friendly, and I hate to say it, but the website knows more than me about some of this stuff. So,
oh wait, I think some other people. How would you find a benefits planner? Somebody's saying.
on our website, we have a state-by-state breakdown of the federal benefits planning. And there's other ways too. I mean, sometimes different organizations that serve people with disabilities will get folks certified in benefits planning too. So another way to do it is to ask. If you're working with your local DD system, or if you're working with other systems that focus on disability, they may have that capacity.
Yeah, ask around. There may even be parent groups that are already doing this that you can potentially learn from as well, I would imagine. Just want to give another second if anybody has any follow-up questions.
I had one question, just for my own clarity.
Yes.
Can you talk a little about the taxes? Like when people put money into the account, is it pre or post tax? And when they take it out, is it taxable?
It should be post-tax going in. So that's the thing. So employers aren't contributing directly, at least currently, to ABLE accounts, although, we're thinking about that and how that might be possible, but it hasn't been yet. So when you get the income, you've already paid the taxes on it. So it's not taxable on the way out, which is pretty convenient.
Very convenient.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. I was just wondering, it's like an IRA or is it like a Roth IRA? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the only reason that's an issue with those is that employers contribute prior to withholding.
Yes. Yeah.
So that isn't the situation we're currently in with ABLE accounts.
Mhm.
That being said, I mean, ABLE accounts are evolving, and which is another good reason, to sign up for our newsletter, because things are being determined, and account holders are out there. coming up with new ways to use ABLE accounts all the time. And
Yes.
it's kind of interesting. 2014 wasn't really that very long ago. And, folks started saving in ABLE accounts, and now they're starting to get some savings, and they're starting to do some stuff. So it's any new developments from the IRS or from Social Security get reported in that newsletter. So it's a good way to keep track of that.
We did ask that, Denise, just so you know. Denise messaged me to see if we asked about the shared living place could open as a rep for people who live there. Lydia says, I was able to download a vast amount of information on all the state plans with basically 2 clicks. So your website is great. I agree. It's a really well done. I mean, it's packed full of information. It's easy. Somebody took a lot of very careful time with that website. So please visit it.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, it's almost putting us out of business in a lot of ways. Like our you topic experts, because it's easy to get information on the website, and it's someplace I would encourage you. It's a lot of information to absorb at one sitting. It's more.
It is.
Go there and go there often.
Also, there's videos on YouTube like this, and that Brian has done, that other people have done. So there's a wealth of ways to get the information, since maybe you process it better reading or watching. Like, there's a lot of information on YouTube about it as well. So I have a disabled child as well, so I've been looking into it myself, and it's well done. It's well done. Is there any move to make it include past age 26 diagnosis? I know I've been asked that by other people.
There is always movement towards that, because everyone would like to see that, but it hasn't happened yet. And again, any movement on that front would be listed in our newsletter. So that's, and that, it's kind of exciting. My tiny area of expertise around this is around transition and employment. And it's fascinating to watch folks that now have this new tool, the ways that they're thinking of applying.
Yes.
The
evolution of it.
My own son. Yeah, when I was talking about my own son and transitioning, right? So we were able to work with him and identify sources to supplement, to get rent assistance for him. But because the rent assistance wasn't federal, it was going to be counted as income by Social Security, which meant it was a zero-sum prospect, right? Whatever assistance he got was going to be out of his cash benefit. So we weren't going to get ahead. Well, we were able to set up a way to put that donation directly into the ABLE account, and then pull the funding out of the ABLE account, and therefore
That's amazing.
count it as income.
So you didn't lose the benefits.
So in a way, it allowed the resource to be used the way it was intended to be used.
Right.
Because it was a local nonprofit, and the funds weren't federal, and so because of the Social Security rules, that counts as income. So, we were able to work with our state program because he moved into a building where a lot of people were moving into, who were on SSI benefits. And so, the whole group got together with the ABLE provider in our state, and we worked out a way to work on it. So it's kind of, my advice would be to go to the website and educate yourself to the greatest extent that you can. And then reach out to your state organizations if you decide it's something that makes sense for you to do, and find out what the particulars are and what you can do. And then, develop that relationship, because, as a youth goes through transition, I'm going to guess there's going to be a bunch of different things that come up that you might be able to really address with that ABLE account.
And I love that it's, for college, career, you could start your own business. So there's all of the business startup account, costs that can be covered, right? It's really
Well, and
widespread.
I mean, think of the Hector story too. I mean, if you think about Hector,
Buying a house, buying a car.
well, and Hector, I mean, for me, it's like 40 houses in 44 years, right? That guy whose lack of assets were very much impacting him negatively
Oh, of course.
all
Of
the
course.
time. But he needed those benefits because of legitimate disability related expenses. So for him, it was like he was very ready to be independent, but the
Right.
of assets was the piece that was missing. So once he was able to accrue assets, his life took off like a rocket. It was amazing to watch. Just all those issues were swept away. I don't know that anyone would have predicted that.
Right.
Wrote this legislation. So
Well, I mean, the tragic irony of people with disabilities is that they always end up with mental health issues as well because of all the like, the anxiety of having to deal with
Yeah,
all of the
absolutely.
issues and the hurdles and the financial issues, with the disability. This at least helps alleviate that problem.
yeah,
to some
I didn't
extent.
do a very good job at telling Sarah's story, but that was really a part of Sarah's story too, which is, she has a mental health disability that cycles. And one of the ways that her ABLE account was really impactful for her was to kind of moderate, was to kind of help with making sure that her resources and supports didn't also cycle.
Yes.
on-
Yes, absolutely.
So, I feel like that again, that is amazing. That's, I came onto the ABLE train late, but I'm a big fan. It's something I can really get behind because it's something I've seen in my own life. I've seen
Yes.
the impact it can have.
Same. Well, thank you so much, Brian. We really appreciate you and ABLE NRC and all you're doing. And yeah, everybody go to the website. We'll send follow-up links. We'll send this presentation. Check out the YouTube channel for ABLE. There's stuff there as well. People are saying thank you. Thank you for saying thank you. And, we will, find your benefits planner, find your state group, find your state organization, and figure out how this can evolve, right? It can only get better. It can only get better with your involvement in it.
And there's not a whole lot of downside. So check it out too. I mean, even if you don't, that's the other thing too, is even if you don't actually use that ABLE account immediately, it could come in handy down the line.